When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be confusing. Like Swedish techno confusing.
Bark, bark, meow, meow. Dance with me, purple cow. Bark, bark, meow, meow. Ooh, you lovely cow.
Geico makes it easy. With 24/7 access, all you have to do is go to Geico.com and you could save money on car insurance. It just makes sense. Unlike,
Dance with me, purple cow. I like your moves.
The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliate stations coast to coast present
Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue.
No hitter for Arrieta.
Discussing baseball, good drinks, and food.
So,
Or clear for a minute so I can write down the damn time.
It just got weird.
With Ted Hicks.
Everybody wants to be Bartolo.
Todd Vandenberg.
The handsomest man on the entire goddamn tour.
And Lee Vowell.
Folks, look around. Anyone who's not singing in the choruses is a racist.
Every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. on the Happy Hour Network.
And welcome to Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue with Ted, Todd, and Lee. Like us on Facebook, follow us on the Twitter at Baseball, Beer, BBQ. We will talk at the bottom of the hour with Al Yellen of SB Nation's Chicago Cubs site, Bleed Cubby Blue. So, Ted, who else do we have to think today?
Whoa. Sounds like
that?
A vacuum cleaner or something like that.
It's not a good time to vacuum. So I muted Todd and it went away. Just saying. So anyway.
Either vacuuming or frying bacon?
Hell no. He always cleans the house at 10 a.m. Saturday mornings. It's really crazy. You just can't change it. He's a creature of habit.
He usually has his undocumented workers at his house.
Maybe that's it. He needs to build his own wall.
So you can also hear us at I-95 Sports Network, Mile High Radio, XRP Radio in the UK. Big shout out to Tiz Shearer. iHeartRadio, iTunes, Arena Sports Network. Big shout out to our good friend Brian Snow, Bobby Blackjack. Want to say thank you. And also we have two other special friends that I believe Todd is going to thank.
We have thousands of special friends, and Leah. Initially, I thought that you were paid by the word because man, you were flying through that until you slowed down a bit. So interesting.
Well, it's a huge show. I always spend way too much time on the intro, so we run out of show.
Well, that's why.
And then you started vacuuming for no reason.
Yeah, I'm not
like
sure
what time the show starts.
I didn't hear it, so I don't know what was going on. Anyway, yes, we do want to thank some special friends. We have a couple very special friends on the Twitter. Computer Repair NC at CJ Computers NC 919-653-8496. They can fix anything in the world, including dogs, but they're not licensed for that, just computers. And Dr. Jimmy Starr of the Jimmy Starr Show. And for some reason, he inexplicably retweets almost everything we do, so we appreciate that. Cappy's Wicked. Cappy's Original Wicked Hot Sauce. Find it on eBay. Burn your mouth to a cinder. Actually, it's not quite that hot. It's very delicious. It is quite hot, so use it sparingly. Actually, put about 8 drops in a jar of pickles, and now they are amazingly excellent. So you can use it for many, many things. Also, a brief shout-out to an old friend of ours, as I tweeted, this show will be amazing because there's nothing better than talking about the World Series. And Murph replied with one word, bacon. So, you're right, Murph. Bacon is better than the World Series. But other than that, nothing is better than today's show about the World Series. Back to you, Lee!
So, obviously we had a big thing that happened in the election yesterday, which was the email snafu has come back to, lack of a better term, grab Hillary by the pussy again. So, it's one of those things where, I'm going to throw it out to you guys. Todd, start with you. Does this mean anything to the election, and what actually is going on with those emails?
I don't think it means anything to the election. I mean, you guys have seen the same news that I've seen, and when the FBI director, Simon J. Feeney, came out with the news, he said that we don't know what's in it, but I'm going to announce this. Okay, that's great. And nothing has come out since then that there was anything of importance, although they did specify there were no emails from Clinton, there were no emails from the DNC, had no links to her private server, so I'm not even sure why they made any announcement. And Trump's base got really, crazy about it because, of course, they get crazy about anything. And they had a conversation on Facebook with a friend of mine, and he's not very conservative, he's fairly conservative, but a major Trump supporter, mainly because he hates Hillary. And he admitted in print that he is more than happy to spread lies and deception because he believes that's what Hillary does. And, all this is doing is speaking to that base who will believe anything because some guy in mom's basement types it and they think that's equal to CNN or the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever evil media, liberal media they don't believe. So I think it's going to amount to absolutely nothing. Ted?
And that is
so,
Donald Trump calling again for Ted.
Yes, it really is. Always at the most inopportune time. Donald, I'll give you my donation shortly. Just hang on after the show. So, this whole email deal, just to give you a little bit of the technicalities behind it, they had something called the litigation hold on, her server and all the other, all the above. They grabbed the server. They grabbed the contents of the server. Were emails deleted? Yes, no, who cares? All right. So we're there. So at that point, they ran recovery protocols on the email server to find a few thousand more. Okay. Now, what they are doing with these additional devices is called e-discovery. And you're saying, why are you giving all these technical terms? Because on Wiener's and Huma's devices or the laptop they shared and their mobile devices, there were some emails that cross-referenced, I guess, the previous search. So the same keywords that came up. So that's, I don't know if that's the October surprise or not. I hope we do find something for James Comey's livelihood, because I think he's definitely out of here. I think he killed himself yesterday by announcing. I mean, because I don't know about you guys. I've never heard of the FBI publicly announcing that, hey, we're doing an investigation, an additional research on XYZ case, and it's driving everyone crazy for both camps to say, release everything. Release all the details. And we say all of this while, 5 or 7 million people have already casted their ballots? There's 37 states that have early voting privileges. So does it mean anything to anyone's base? No, not at all. For the people that are on the fringe or independents, who knows? But the diehards, Trump or Hillary lovers or haters, are going to do what they're going to do. I mean, a week ago, we've heard 10 or 12 women come out and say, this guy groped me. Well, not me, but groped them. And does it even matter? It doesn't even matter to these supporters. I mean, to these surrogates either. So what does it mean? We don't know. I definitely think the FBI director has seen his time is coming to a close.
So basically, to take away all of Ted's fancy words, Hillary's a liar, and that's what he's basically saying. He's just saying it in a very fancy way, an elitist way, I think, of saying it, and he doesn't want to just come out. Is that correct, Ted?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to sound smart for a change.
I just thought you were going to say wrong.
I haven't done that in a couple of weeks.
Donald does it every debate. I don't know. So actually, a number of early ballots cast already. This is according to electproject.org 2016. 19,051,000. So a lot.
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, so one of these things that we talked about a little bit before we came on the air is the fact that this came out on Friday, but so many people have already voted that maybe there's, as you guys hinted at, it's just very strange timing for the FBI to announce anything and to announce it right before the election. Surely they're not stupid. Anybody who says anything at this point affects everything's blown out of proportion, like by a billion. Exponentially. So it's everything gets blown out of proportion. So it was weird timing, but maybe it doesn't matter anyway. Like you said, Todd, it's one of those things where it's like, who you're going to vote for is not going to change based on these emails or whatever came out yesterday. If you don't know who you're going to vote for between Trump and Clinton at this point, then why are you even voting? I mean, honestly, it's like they're so different that it's like, well, I mean, they're different at least as far as the way they're going about things, the way we're perceiving them as being different. Sorry, go ahead.
To interject a couple thoughts between Trump and Clinton and Johnson and Stein and whoever else, or leaving it blank. And again, nobody here cares if you decide not to vote for the president. I mean, we do. We think you should vote for Hillary because Trump is Satan. But other than that, do not stay away from the polls just because you're incensed about the presidential election. I mean, we've said it before, and I want to stress again, your local school board is at least as important, certainly more important on a day-to-day basis than the presidential election. So please make sure you go and vote. In 2008, there were 131 million votes cast. And how many early voters have there been, Lee? 20, how many million?
Almost 20
this
million.
Year, 19. Yeah, 20 million basically, yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm sure it's 20 at this point. After today, it's definitely over 20 at this point.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you're right. So if we have a really high turnout, 2012 was 118. So which you can understand with an incumbent, and Romney didn't exactly do anything to excite the base. So let's say it goes up to 130. 31 again. I mean, you're looking at 15% of the ballots have already been cast. I mean, that's amazing. And for those people, obviously, there's not going to be an October surprise. I don't think there's going to be an October surprise. The one thing I wish there was another debate the Sunday evening before the election. Because as we've seen, Trump cannot do anything other than hurt himself with those who are somehow, like you said, haven't decided yet. I don't understand how you haven't been able to decide between those two. I get that you might decide, I'll go with Gary Johnson, I'll go with Jill Stein, I'll go with, and I apologize, but I don't know who's running for the Communist Party. But I mean seriously, whoever. I can understand.
It's Randy Moss, actually. Randy Moss.
There you go. Randy Moss makes sense. But how you could not have made a decision between those two is amazing. Going on the basis that they're both as horrible as their opponents say, there's still huge differences between them. I don't understand how you cannot make a decision between what their actual policies are. So that's kind of amazing to me that you could be undecided at this point. But yes.
Todd, can I jump in for one quick second to ask a question?
No.
Okay. No.
Yes.
So my one question for you and also for Lee, since I haven't been on the show in 2 weeks. And
wait a minute. He's black. He's protesting. Get him out of here. Get him out of here now.
Did I have a knee down, or were my arms interlocking? No. But is it safe?
Obviously, it's not safe with one of those people on the loose. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
I thought this show was a safe zone for all of us. All right. No, my one question for you, for both of you, gentlemen, and I forgot my question, is for the people that are still saying undecided, is it safe to say, hey, they don't want to publicly say they're voting for Trump because that's like not in vogue or chic or like, hip, rather than say, oh, I'm undecided, because there's no way you can be undecided at this point.
You know,
Not
I
between
can see,
those two.
Yeah, I can see people saying to friends, I'm not going to say who I'm voting for because, you know, their friend is on the other side of whichever side they're on, and they don't want to get into it. I get that. But for you know, anonymous pollsters to call you and you to say, I don't know, that's pretty bizarre to me. That's extremely bizarre. And we were talking pre-pro because we're professionals and we talk about things before the show. We were discussing this myth that there's going to be this groundswell of undisclosed secret Trump voters. Like, they seem to be pretty vocal. I don't think there's going to be any secret Trump voters. Like zero. That concept that ties in with the whole thing of where there was polls that showed that Trump has 87% of the vote. It's like, no, that's so bizarre. A pro-Nazi Disney studio would not cast that fairy tale out there. It's like not going to happen. And I'm not saying Disney is pro-Nazi. I'm just saying if they were, not even they would come out with that statement because that's so far beyond reality. It's ridiculous.
Right. So if we look at the polls currently, and I think we can throw out the LA Times poll because it's been like weird the whole time. I mean, currently it shows Trump up 2%, and this is general election between Trump and Clinton, but it's always been tight. So I'm not sure who they're polling. It's kind of strange. Maybe they're just polling Orange County. So, and then if we look at ABC News, it could be, ABC News, and this is today's poll. Clinton leads against Trump versus Clinton versus Johnson versus Stein by 2 percentage points. And then in just Trump and Clinton, which doesn't really matter, up 3. So, you know, Johnson and Stein are not taking many votes away from either candidate at this point. Right. And then IBD, I'm not sure what that is. They have Clinton up 5 percentage points. If it's head-to-head.
International Daily. Right, okay. International Business Daily, which is interesting that their polls are showing Clinton up by 5.
Right.
Yeah, well, 4 against all 4. Randy Moss actually does get 1 percentage point in their poll. And then, I don't know why you're laughing. That's not funny. And then we look at Rasmussen. It's a tie. Of course, it's the same thing we talked about before with them. It's just
Rasmussen's only showing a tie, really? Wow.
Right. Exactly.
That's
almost as bad
for
as
Trump.
the LA Times. Yeah.
That's horrible
exactly.
for Trump.
But a bit, honestly, some sad news. It looks like that Trump has gotten a bigger lead in Idaho. So, that's, you're going to have to write that off as a loss. Clinton leads in Michigan by 7. That's according to Emerson. Ralph Waldo made his own poll. He doesn't have anything to do except to call people now. And then in Virginia, Christopher Newport University. There's some strange polls out there. Clinton leads in Virginia by 7. So, I mean, those are important states, obviously, Michigan and Virginia. Who gives a shit about Idaho, honestly? But, Virginia, Michigan, Florida, obviously, is a big one. Latest poll I've seen, it looks like Trump leads by a percentage point in Florida. So that means really it's a toss-up either way. Todd, you're in Florida. You get a feel for it either way at this point?
No. But seriously, I mean, I don't mean that to be glib, but I mean, Florida is definitely a toss-up. I think I don't remember, and I apologize, I don't remember if it was Trump or Pence who just campaigned in Utah. But
Pence.
Okay, Pence. I was thinking it was Pence. And not to disparage the people out in Utah at all.
Yeah.
But at this point, why are you campaigning in Utah?
Yes.
How is that going to swing the election for you? I mean, some polls actually show that Evan McMullin is leading Trump.
22 or 23%, right?
You've got issues in Utah. Yeah. So why are you going to Utah, and why do you make a brand promotion / campaign appearance in Washington, D.C.? Why are you wasting time doing this? And I'm just talking about politics. I'm not talking about what's right for the country. I'm talking about politics. And I mean, this is one thing that I think eventually, in addition to his numerous egregious faults as a human being, if he is a human being, is going to hurt Trump because he does not understand politics. And a lot of people say, well, that's his strength. It's like he's an outsider. Yeah. It's like, yeah, he is a billionaire outsider. Right. It's like, whatever, go back and smoke your weed or drink your drink or whatever the hell you're doing. That makes you think he's an outsider of the establishment. And he's as inside as he could be. The only reason he's outside is because he screwed over, I don't know, $3.4 billion worth of buddies when he bankrupted the 6 companies. So, that's one reason why I don't like him. But why are you campaigning in Utah? Why are you campaigning in Washington, D.C.? Why do you waste time and valuable resources fighting for, what does Utah have, 5 electoral votes? And going to Washington, D.C., which you're going to lose? It's like, dude, send the kiddies to promote the Trump Hotel. And as far as branding goes, now he's pushing the new brand, Scion, which even Toyota figured was a shitty brand name. They're like, really? Scion?
Actually, just to change the subject completely, I actually had a... So, yes, my day job, obviously, I work in claims, and I had to call a tow yard and say, hey, the car's been there since August. We need to try to get moved. How much is it? And what the tow yard guy said, and I've heard they were crooks, and this is in Cleveland, Tennessee, by the way. North and South towing. If you ever have to go to Cleveland, Tennessee, don't have your car towed there. They will charge you. So anyway, it was like $4,000. So actually, it was more than that. So I said,
where were they towing to? Alaska?
Yeah, well, I said, yeah, which car are you calling about? And I was like, 2008 Toyota Scion. Well, which one is it, Toyota or Scion? It's a Toyota Scion. He's like, no, I can't. I mean, it's a Scion or it's a Toyota. They're not the same thing.
Oh, God.
You have a tow yard? You're an idiot. I'm sorry. It's I don't know. Is it a Ranger or a Ford? Which one is it? I mean, come on. Anyway, and yeah, Todd, I'll tell you why Mike Pence was in Utah, because he was hoping to watch number 4 Washington against number 17 Utah today at 3:30. So, changing over to football, let's make our NFL picks before we're joined by Al Yellen in 10 minutes. So, I'll start with the picks because it seems like every Thursday night game I have to own up to picking the wrong team. I actually had Jacksonville. I have no idea why I still have hope in Jacksonville. Maybe it's Gus Bradley. He was a good defensive coordinator with Seattle. I'm hoping they'll do well. But, of course, the Titans won, so I got that pick wrong. So did you guys have a pick for this? Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Tennessee Titans?
In reference to your comment, I'll just say even the best mechanic has to have the right tools. That's why he's not doing well with Jacksonville, so not his fault.
Nice play with the
it was good. I think I went with the Titans, though, just because they've been running up and down the field on a lot of people. Who cares? It's Thursday night. That's not football. That's a frickin' scrimmage that they charge people to go watch. I mean, they need to kill that abomination.
Do you even notice that last Thursday's game wasn't on CBS, NBC? It wasn't streamed on Twitter. It was just strictly on the NFL Network. They're still pushing the NFL Network down people's throats. After what, 10 years? 12 years?
Yeah. I didn't know it wasn't on Twitter because that's actually how I have the NFL Network, though I hardly ever watch it, to be honest. But I have watched the Thursday night games on Twitter. I didn't even – because, there was some other game on, I think, more important than that football game on Thursday night. But, yeah, I thought – actually, it wasn't. But anyway, so, neither here nor there. But,
Tennessee.
Yeah, I had no idea it wasn't on Twitter.
Tennessee was my pick.
Oh, okay. Thank you for changing. I was kind of going off the rails. Ted's like, it's fucking Tennessee. Let's move on. So, Redskins and Bengals. I have the Bengals because it's at home. Todd?
Well, I don't really care. Bengals. Is this the London game again? Isn't it the London game?
It is the London game, correct?
The London game.
Another abomination of a London game, so home doesn't matter. Did I just say Bengals? Yeah, sure, why not? I don't care. They're both mediocre.
The next coach of the New York Jets, Mr. Marvin Lewis. Bengals all day.
Oh, my God.
Awesome. We've talked about two games two meaningless games in 3 minutes. We're not making very good time here. So the Patriots play Buffalo in Buffalo, and I'm picking the Patriots. Todd?
Yeah, Buffalo's not going to do it twice. Patriots.
Jets and Browns. So the Jets have a bye week, so I'm going to go with the Jets.
That is officially this week's toilet bowl. Jets all day.
That's this year's toilet bowl, not the week. Are you kidding me? Wow.
No,
it's tragic.
49ers and Browns. That's what you could
tragic.
Ooh.
Tragic for 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Lions and Texans. I have the Lions for no reason really, but the Lions are 10-5 in their last 15 games, which is crazy. I think Matthew Stafford has like 34 touchdown passes versus 10 interceptions or something in that time.
Yeah, they came on at the end of last season when it was too late, but so far it's carried over. Lions. Jim Bob Cooter. Best name in football. Jim Bob Cooter.
Cooter Brown.
And obviously he can coach.
Lions.
Brock all day. The $72 million man.
Wow. So obviously that means Ted is picking the Lions. So the Chiefs and Colts, I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
No, Chiefs are a much better team, which means the Colts will probably win, but the Chiefs are much better. Chiefs.
Raiders and Buccaneers. And Raiders 5-2. I'm going to go with the Raiders. The Raiders.
Nah, I'll go with the Bucks.
The Raiders.
The Seahawks and Saints, early game, no Michael Bennett, no Cam Chancellor in this game for the Seahawks. And I'll never pick the Seahawks, so I'm going to go with the Saints. Plus, Saints at home, early game. Actually, this could be a toss-up game. Who do you guys have?
Well, it's not an East Coast game, so I'll go Hawks, yeah.
Go Hawks.
Cardinals and Panthers. The 3-1 Cardinals versus the 1-5 Panthers. And if you had that bet going into before the season going into this game,
no kidding. You're a multi-millionaire. You can use Trump.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still going to go with the Panthers just because it's at home.
Yeah, I cannot believe the Panthers are just this awful. But no, I'll go with the Cardinals because they really are this awful. They fell apart.
Never been a fan of Scam Newton, so I'm going Cardinals.
That's funny. Broncos and Chargers. I mean, it's the Chargers aren't horrible, but it's Denver at home, so I'm going to go with Denver.
Denver.
Broncos.
And a game that could be really exciting, actually, the Falcons and Packers. It's in Atlanta, so I'm going to go with Atlanta, just because Aaron Rodgers has still been up and down this season. So I've got Atlanta.
And I'll go with the Packers. He has been. He's really been off, but I'll say he has just enough to make it. Packers.
And
I just
the Cowboys.
I don't trust Atlanta. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, they have lost their last two. So the Cowboys and Eagles, it's interesting because the Eagles actually have a good front seven defensively, and the Cowboys have that massive, great offensive line. And the Cowboys 5-1. It's in Dallas. The Eagles 4-2. The Eagles coming off a win against the Vikings. This could be the game of the week, really. But I'm going to go with Dallas because it's in Dallas.
Yeah, I think it is the game of the week. I will go with the Eagles. I think they'll hold Ezekiel to under 150.
Wow.
Which will be the key to winning. He'll probably get 140, but I think the Eagles.
The boys.
And then the Bears and the Vikings, the 1-6 Chicago Bears versus the 5-1 Minnesota Vikings. And even though it's in Chicago, along with 96% of the rest of the pickers of this, probably into the tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, who knows, I'm going to go with the Vikings over the Bears.
Oh, easy. Did you guys see the poll on Mike and Mike that which teams would have more wins? Either the Cleveland and Chicago NFL teams combined, or the winner of the World Series. And the winner of the World Series came out ahead. Like, wow, that's pretty awful. Yeah, exactly.
Actually not a. I know it's not a stretch.
Well, and they actually went for the rest of the season, but I mean, seriously, for the entire season. Yeah, that's not a stretch
at all.
That's
what I'm saying. I don't think it's a stretch.
Right. I don't either. That's awful. Very weird. Anyway,
And Ted, Vikings, Bears?
Vikings.
Okay. So at this point, we are happy to have Al Yellen of Bleed Cubby Blue back onto the show. He's been on several times with us before. He's always great to have on, especially this time of season when the Cubs are in the World Series. So, Al, how are you?
Well, it's not a real happy day to be a Cubs fan, but hanging in there.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, it's how it is. You lost last night 1-0. You got another game tonight. Could be 2-2. And just like they were down to the Dodgers 2-1, came back and won the next 3. So, what are your first reactions from last night's game?
Well, I mean, obviously you can't win if you don't score, and it was kind of strange to see a day at Wrigley Field with the wind blowing out and a 1-0 game. They just couldn't get hits when they needed to get hits. But like you said, they came back down 2-1 to beat the Dodgers, and after also in Game 3 of the championship series, they looked even worse than they did last night. At least last night they had some real chances to score runs. So, it's not going to be easy to beat Corey Kluber. On the other hand, Kluber's going on 3 days rest, which has not been easy for pitchers in the postseason. They got a good look at Kluber in Game 1, so they should have a pretty good shot tonight.
Yeah, and just, I don't know what the stats are. Do the Cubs, when they come back against that same pitcher, do they usually do better in that second, facing the pitcher the next time, kind of figure out what he does, in your opinion?
Well, they certainly did in the championship series against Clayton Kershaw, who's probably the best pitcher in baseball. So if that's any, if history's any guide there, that's a good indication.
Yeah, and that one hurt me. I'm a Dodgers. Always, 45 years of my life, I've been a Dodgers fan, so I didn't have any faith in Kershaw in that second game, and he proved me right, so it was good. But, Kyle Schwarber won't play in the field. Carlos Santana will. What are your thoughts on Santana and left? And is Schwarber just not able to do anything in the field? Because it seems like they miss him when he's not in there so far.
Well, I mean, he was ruled out a couple of days ago by the doctors. They said it was too risky to play him in the field, and I would agree with that. They said that he would maybe be 60%. You don't want a 60% Kyle Schwarber in the outfield. It's just not feasible. He came up with it last night with a chance to pinch hit and get a key hit. Just couldn't do it. That doesn't mean he won't be able to do it in another important situation in Game 4 or Game 5. So I think they made the right choice with that. As far as Carlos Santana in left field, he was kind of a non-factor last night. Made one play in the outfield, did all right, and then they got him out of there for a pinch hitter and for defense. So, the Indians managed to play it the right way. The Cubs are just going to have to live with Schwarber as a pinch hitter for a couple of days, and this team has a lot of other good hitters, so it's not just him. The whole rest of the team couldn't get it done last night.
Al, welcome back to the show. This is Ted from the Satellite Office in New York. Question on the $180 million man, and that is Jason Hayward. So how do you expect him to respond to being benched in the series, and will this have any carryover to next season?
It's really hard to tell in terms of this series. I would expect Hayward to be back in the lineup at some point. They got to try to get something out of him. He did reach base in the ninth inning last night, did steal a base. He can still play good defense. There's no reason they can't use that good defense in right field. Will it have an effect next year? It's been said in a lot of places that Hayward, there's something really wrong with Hayward's swing and that he pretty much has to rip it apart and start over. I would expect them to do that going into the offseason. This is the guy who's had 6 years of major league success before he came to the Cubs. I don't see any reason why he can't continue to do that, but he's going to have to change his approach.
And Al, I got to ask you, what do you think about Utah versus Washington? No, I was just joking.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you a thing about that.
So, Lester was off in Game 1. Does that have a concern for you in Game 5?
Not at all. John Lester's been a top-notch postseason pitcher. Every time he's gone out, he did an awesome job in the championship series when he needed to, and he's had World Series success. He's pitched World Series clinching games, so I expect him to go out and have a good evening in Game 5. Really, Game 4 is the key. Beating Kluber tonight, if you can go, you can go into Game 5 tied at 2. Then you've got good pitching matchups favorable to the Cubs in Games 5 and 6. So, obviously nobody wants to go down 3-1 in any best-of-7 series. So tonight's important, really important. John Lackey has talked all year about these being the big boy games. Well, it's time for the big boy, John Lackey, to step up. He's pitched World Series clinching games before, so he knows what's at stake here.
Yeah, and you mentioned Corey Kluber. Obviously, they couldn't do anything against him in Game 1, and you mentioned the short rest. Do they have to change their approach to Kluber? How can they get to him in the Game 4?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, they just have to stay within themselves and do what they've done right all year. They did that against Clayton Kershaw. I think they can take the same approaches against a pitcher as good as Kluber. Kluber did pitch on 3 days rest once in the American League Championship Series against the Blue Jays. That was the one game that Blue Jays won in that series. So, that could be a good indication that you can get to Kluber on short rest.
And other than Kluber, is there one guy that just gives you nightmares on the Cleveland roster?
Well, obviously it's Andrew Miller. The Cubs were lucky to get Miller out of the game last night because they had to bat for him in a close game. And, then the Indians do have other good relievers, but you don't want to see Miller in there for, 2 or 3 innings in the middle innings because, he's just been lights out the whole postseason.
Yeah, and you mentioned Miller's been lights out this postseason, but, another guy who's really stepped up for the Cubs, Ben Zobrist. I mean, the team really needs to rally around him. He's been phenomenal, really, this whole series. What are your thoughts on how big he has been so far?
Well, keep in mind that Ben Zobrist also has, significant World Series experience. He played for the winning Royals last year. He played for Joe Madden in the 2008 World Series for the Rays. So Ben Zobrist knows what's at stake here, and I think that he's kind of the guy who's got a little bit of winning behind him, and if he can help lead this offense, I think maybe the other guys will take the lead, take the follow, and follow along.
And what are just some of your biggest surprises about the World Series so far, other than what we've mentioned? Anything that 2 or 3 things that really stand out to you about it so far?
Other than the fact that the Cubs have had trouble generating offense, except for Game 2, not really. These teams are both good teams. The Cubs obviously were the best team in baseball, won 103 games, but you can't discount the Indians at all. They're a 94-win team. They beat some good teams in the American League Central in the postseason. I don't think anybody really expected them to get past the Red Sox, and they managed to do that. So nobody can really underestimate Cleveland. They've got this lockdown bullpen, and so the Cubs have got to get to the starters early. I think that's the most important thing.
So, Al, because the American League won the All-Star game, Kyle Schwarber gets potentially 4 games at DH. Your thoughts on the irony, and how should home field be determined?
Well, I think that's maybe one of the stupidest ideas in sports history. Come on, the All-Star game is supposed to be for fun. It's an exhibition game. It's not played the same way regular season games are played. So, this was a gimmick by Bud Selig. They seem kind of dug in and want to keep it, even though no fans want it, no players want it, nobody wants it except the commissioner's office. And there's no question that home field should be determined by the best record. The Cubs should have had games 1 and 2 at home this year.
And finally, what roster changes do you expect to see next season?
Well, the one thing that's going to be really interesting to see is whether the Cubs make a move to keep Dexter Fowler. I think that to me, that's one of the most important things they can do. Granted, the Fowler's 30, and he's not always going to be as good as he was this year, but there's just something about him at the top of that lineup that makes this team go. They are a better team with him in the leadoff spot. They can certainly work Albert Almora into the lineup as a left fielder. The ideal scenario for me would be to take Jorge Soler and try and trade him for pitching help. And you could then, Kyle Schwarber should be back available to play left field next year. They could platoon Schwarber and Almora in left field, kind of work those guys both in. Schwarber doesn't hit left-handers real well. Almora could, and keep Dexter Fowler. That's what I would try to do if I were management. It'll be real interesting to see how they handle that.
Okay. Ted was supposed to close you out, but Ted is. He's still upset. He's a Mets fan. He just heard about Cespedes this week. He doesn't know what to do in his life, I think. So,
my goodness.
Al, we really appreciate you being on as always. Will you let people know where you can be found on social media and read your stuff?
It's bleedcubbyblue.com. There's a Bleed Cubby Blue Facebook page and at Bleed Cubby Blue on Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you. And we hope the Cubs, it'd be great. If I have family in Chicago, it'd be great if the Cubs won it. So thanks for being on. I hope for your sake they win the World Series.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, I mean, it was funny because Game 1 and Game 2 really were, 5-0 and 5-1, right, I think. And then last night, going back to Chicago, it was a 1-0 game. So it's been such a one-sided series either way, and for the first two, and then last night was just Coco Crisp, a guy who you can only hope to contain, and you can't stop him. Drives in that run. I'm joking, obviously. But, honestly, I got to say it. I didn't know Count Chocula could still run after all these years. From him going to the home, it was truly, truly amazing. So, what did you think? What did you guys have thoughts about what Al said? Anything that really stood out to you?
Other than that, Al's awesome. It's interesting that he focused on Dexter Fowler. I came across this article because they had mentioned something on, I think it was the Four Letter Network, how much this team is the work of the young phenom, who's not that young anymore, Theo Epstein. Do you guys know that the only two players on the 25-man roster that were there before Epstein came on is Contreras and Baez? That's it. Epstein brought in everybody else. Everybody. That is crazy. Since 2011 that they've rebuilt the roster that much. Wow. As you say,
overrated, obviously.
Yeah. When they say he's going to the Hall of Fame, I think he's going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, whether they win or lose this series obviously makes no difference as far as that argument goes. I'd be really curious to see what they do. What they do with, I don't know that they can do anything with Hayward if he doesn't rebuild his swing. No one's going to take him, so they're stuck with him. And
I thought it was a player's option, right? He has a player's option to opt out, but it's not a team option that he opts out, correct? Because I think he has that option after a year or two to opt out of that contract. Now he's not going to. Why would you?
Right.
But if he had a big enough year, but I think it's just his option. Is that right?
I have no idea, but I'll assume you're right. But like you said, it doesn't make any difference because why would you leave the Cubs? And to his point, that saying they've done well without Schwarber, they won 103 games without Schwarber. I mean, having him reduced to a pinch hitter role doesn't help, obviously, but they won 103 games without the guy, so it's not like they're toast without him. One thing that surprises me about Cleveland, really all season long, is you look at their lineup, and it's like, really? How did these guys get here? I mean, they're like a classic no-name team, basically. I mean, like I mentioned to you guys the other day, that a young local out of West Palm Beach, sports broadcaster, literally thought that Carlos Santana playing left field, that was a prank news story because she thought they meant to get. She literally had not heard the name Carlos Santana, which is,
he's a good player.
I'm sorry, you don't have to be. Yeah, you don't. It's like if you haven't heard of Carlos Santana, you don't need to be doing sports radio, idiot. I mean, that's ridiculous. But
yeah,
and he's
of course they did have Dave
Matthews
in center. So I mean, I don't know what's happening with that.
So it's interesting to me that they've been able to generate plenty of offense at times, and they play a lot of small ball and they steal a lot of bases and blah blah blah. I would rather see the Cubs win. I'm not against Cleveland. I mean, that would be a great story, obviously. But I've got family in Chicago and grew up in Michigan. So it was like, the Cubs are kind of a cool team too. So I'm pulling for them in this championship game. But last night was a great game. Great game. I'm really glad to see that after the two back-to-back, just kind of let's coast through these games. I mean, they were fun games to watch, but last night was terrific. Last night was a great game, I thought.
And I thought what really separated the game was, because it was a great game, was the managers either won or lost that game. And Francona, man, that guy, both those managers are just phenomenal, really. And that's what makes this one of the most exciting World Series in a long time, not just because Cleveland hasn't won it in, 1948, I think, and then the Chicago Cubs haven't won it, I believe, since George Washington was leading that charge at Valley Forge. But it's been, the managers are just phenomenal. And watch Francona, because, I'm some schlub. Who am I? But, I mean, bringing Miller in the fifth, I was like, oh, that's really early. But it worked out. It worked out perfectly. And I'm sure he thought, that's the fifth inning. He's probably thinking in the eighth inning, he's obviously thinking 2 or 3 or more steps ahead and thinking currently as well. And that's what makes both those guys a great manager, is because that's what they do. So, I don't know. So let's take a second, and it's 10:45 a.m. Eastern Time on the 29th of October, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to announce the Baseball Beer and Barbecue, and all these players who win this award will get nothing. But let's say let's start with the rookie of the year in both leagues. And Todd, we'll go first with you. So, rookie of the year in the American League. Yeah, well, I could go first, but I feel like
No, I'll go first. I had a really hard time making this decision because Sanchez came on like an absolute monster, but he did have a bad last week. I mean, an abysmal last week. He hit like 0.93, and I still think, I'm sure he'll be a star, and he'll be a phenomenal player. And when you look at his runs created per 27 outs, he fits right in between a couple of the MVP candidates. Probably the 2 major MVP candidates in the American League. He's between them, so obviously he had a hell of a good ride. But I'm still actually going to go with Fulmer. I think Michael Fulmer, that is, of my Detroit Tigers, proved his worth over a longer span. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Sanchez doesn't wind up having the biggest career, but we've seen lots of hitters come up and have just explosive a couple of months, and then they're kind of like, okay.
Never heard
and
of
I'm
it
afraid. Exactly, and I'm sure we'll hear of Sanchez, but I don't think he's going to be hitting 80 homers or whatever ridiculous pace he was on. He's not going to do that, obviously. So I'm going to go with Fulmer, who had an excellent season for the Tigers, and they'll both have great careers, I'm sure.
And go ahead and we'll do both at the same time. So who's the?
Oh, your
Mr.
homie,
obviously, yeah.
Your homie, Mr. Seager.
It's not even close, right? I think the odds, like Bleacher Report's odds, were 1-9 of his.
I haven't seen,
Corey
but
Seager winning.
Yeah, there's no competition, I don't think, in the National League. Although Ted will probably have some Met.
Ted, what do you think?
I do have a Met. He's a former one, and he came in the Yoenis Cespedes deal. Mr. Fulmer.
Yep.
Okay. And what about the National League?
It has to be Seager.
Yeah. Because a guy could win the MVP. I mean, he's not going to, but he could be.
Right. Does Sanchez even register as a rookie? Was there enough games played?
Yeah, he ended up playing that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
What is it? McCovey had 2 fewer games, I think.
Okay.
Actually.
Willie McCovey?
54? Is that how many he had? Yeah.
Yeah, what a washout. That guy didn't amount to anything. Talking about guys.
Exactly. And Sanchez very well could be that guy.
Yeah,
but I got to go with Fulmer.
And I had Fulmer and Seager as well. So let's move on
what a
to
boring
manager.
Show. Let's end it. We're boring.
And I'll go ahead and say my managers. It's the 2 guys in the World Series. So, Todd?
Unfortunately, for the sake of the show, I don't see how you can say anything other than the 2 guys in the World Series. I mean, hands down. You just look at the moves they make. It's like, come on.
Right.
The 2 guys in the World Series plus Terry Collins as my write-in choice, because he did an even better job this year than he did last year with no arms. There you go. That's Met fans. I hope you guys are happy.
Hey, to your point, Ted, you're right. I mean,
Well,
he did a hell of a job with that team.
And I could say the same thing about my guy Roberts in Los Angeles. I mean, everybody fell apart, even Kershaw, and it was like
You guys
still
had
won
like
the
97
division.
people on the DL.
Yeah.
You had to call
Actually,
people up from Double A to put him on the DL.
Which reminds me, why are the Cubs not DHing Hack Wilson? Hello. So anyway, let's move on to let's move on to the Cy Young. So Todd, who do you have? Your Cy Young winners for 2019.
My Cy Young winner is a guy who does not qualify for the statistical leads, but it's your homie Kershaw. He's the best pitcher. Sorry, he was. That's I don't care. You know, you can throw out anybody else, but he was the best pitcher easily. And have to go with Kluber. The guy's ridiculous, has ridiculous stuff. And there's a lot of candidates in the American League. And both. I mean, this is the wide open category. So, you know, unless Ted comes up with something stupid, which he will because he's a Met fan. Yeah, it's wide open. But I'll go with Kershaw and Kluber.
Ted, go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah. Respond to Todd's attack on your personal being.
I'm going with Hap for Toronto. And I'm going with none other than Bartolo J. Cologne. Matt Scherzer. I mean, Matt Scherzer, hands down.
Terrible, choices.
It is wide open. Actually, I'm going to go with a guy. The reason I chose this guy in the American League is because when he wasn't pitched in the playoffs, it showed what a value he was to his team. So I went with Zach Britton because I don't even know if the Orioles get to the playoffs if there's no Zach Britton.
Yeah.
And then in the National League, I thought about Scherzer, but I went ahead and went with Jose Fernandez because it's so close. You know, and what happened at the end. I mean, it's not that. Yeah, and it's not that he is not worthy. He is completely worthy. And he was on a bad team, so I went with Jose Fernandez. So, MVP, most valuable player, Todd.
MVP, most valuable player. I am going with Mr. Trout. He's probably going to need a really big case by the time his career is over, isn't he?
So here's the thing about the MVP award. It should go to somebody who's the most valuable player instead of the best player in the league. So I've muted Todd because he is now banished from the show. He's probably going to say something like Andre Dawson in 1987. So, Todd, now that you've had time to rethink your American League MVP,
Andre Dawson in 1987. No, I am still going to go with Trout because, and I agree. And normally I do go with the person who is most valuable because, you know, as was said of, was it Kiner? Was it Kiner that the manager said, hey, we could finish last without you? Doesn't matter. But to me, he had very little help and still put up huge numbers. So to me, it's Trout in the American League. But on the National League, I will go in the other direction, and I will go with Daniel Murphy because without Daniel Murphy, the Mets would have been nowhere. And then, not that he doesn't have the numbers. Obviously, he had the numbers, but
the Mets were nowhere. Daniel Murphy wasn't there last season.
That's what I think. Todd, I don't know if that was an unintentional dig, but that's what I heard too.
That's another dig at the Mets, and I don't like it.
Aw, Ted. Ted, are you sad?
I know.
No, seriously.
He's worth the money.
Remember what happened in April and May? And all the talk was about Harper, and oh my God, and then he just went. Like Murphy was the guy who got him there.
Yeah. So Ted,
what are we talking about?
Practice. Talking about practice.
Practice. For me, I'm going the sentimental route, but Big Papi gets the AL MVP.
And your National League winner?
Trout's going to win it every year. He's going to be up there. He's like LeBron James, where he's competing for it every year. We know he's the best player in the league. But when you say most valuable player, I mean, I think to that team and what he did this season with it coming to a close for his career, I say Ortiz. And Ugh. I hate the Nationals. I really do.
As you should.
And I hate Roy Hobbs. I really do. Daniel Murphy is, geez. What he did this season was remarkable. I want to say Jonas Cespedes, but you got to give it over to the Nationals.
I know. I agree. He's going to be a national next year. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know. He was supposed to be a national last season.
Yeah, that was weird. I forgot about that. Yeah. So I went with before the season. I said my preseason pick was going to be Mookie Betts, and I'm going to stick with Mookie Betts. I think if he doesn't win it, he's going to be top 3. Ortiz, great choice. Trout is arguably the best player in baseball, and I just still it comes down to me on most valuable player is a guy who, when your team is just on the cusp of not making the playoffs, and now both these teams, well, maybe the Red Sox don't have it if Betts is hurt all year, but because the other guy they make the playoffs, it's going to be kind of obvious. But it's always, to me, a most valuable player should be a guy who is on a team who's just good enough to almost make the playoffs, but definitely makes the playoffs because that guy's on the team. And yes, does that hinder Trout, and is that his fault? It's not his fault, and yes, it hinders him. But at the same time, it's like, it's not best player of the year. It is most valuable player, and who's valuable to their team, and it is team sport that is baseball. So I went with Mookie Betts. And then, like I said, in the National League, it's a little different because I think the team may have made the playoffs, but they probably wouldn't have been as good as they are. And I went with Chris Bryant as my National League MVP. So, and I mean, we're talking about Trout. I mean, Bryant's going to be up there every year too, and Seager's going to be up there every year. He probably is going to be, especially at his position, putting up the numbers that he puts up. So it'll be interesting. The sad thing is, of course, of all these people, that Jose Fernandez is not the guy we're going to see pitching next year. So it's
yeah.
I hope it's all a joke, and I hope that he wins Comeback Player of the Year next year, and it's all a big surprise, like egg on your face. I'd be okay with that instead of the tragedy that happens. So anyway, let's do something a little bit different just for a couple of minutes. We talked the NFL and made picks there. Let's make some really quick picks about college football. And college football, Ted, for people who live in big cities, that's like the minor leagues of football. So if you don't know any of these teams, just throw out your favorite state or city.
Rutgers.
So, and I want to go in order, but the way ESPN, there you go. I want to go in order, but the way ESPN has my favorite, how you can hit favorite, and it shows you that team's up top. So I have to just go by what I'm saying. So Washington versus Utah at 3:30. Utah likes to control the clock. They have a great running game. It's going to be a tough game for Washington. This could be a game they lose, but I'm going to go. Should I do the same? I'll go with Utah. They win it 56-0 because I never. My team. So,
I think it is going to be a tough game, but I think it's Washington.
And
yeah,
Ted.
Yeah.
Okay. You should just say yeah. Okay. So and the same thing. South Carolina 63-0 over Tennessee. Todd.
Tennessee, obviously.
Okay. And Ted, you have family in South Carolina, or you did, correct?
Yes, I do. And we're going for Tennessee. Yeah, that sounds good. And
then West Virginia and Oklahoma State. I'm going to go with West Virginia because they are unbeaten. But this should be a good game. This should be a fun game, Ted. If you want to watch a game at 12 p.m. today, this should be a fun game to watch. A lot of offense probably. But I'm going to go with Oklahoma State in an upset because it's at home.
After you just said you were going with West Virginia because they're unbeaten. You're insane. Actually,
no,
I agree with you.
I meant to say West Virginia is unbeaten. I didn't mean to say I was going to go with them because you tend not to go to. You reach our age, it's not a "will you go with me" kind of thing anymore. It's more of a "will we date?" And
our age.
Go through
our age.
Yeah.
You whippersnappers. I agree with you. It's Oklahoma State in an upset, 87-84.
And that could be
no
right.
overtime. No overtime.
Ted, do you care about this one? Oklahoma State, West Virginia?
Not a care in the world.
Okay. Both states in play for. No, I'm joking. I can't even go there. So big game for Todd. Michigan and Michigan State at 12 p.m. Of course, fascinating ending where Michigan won the game last year. No, I'm joking. I'm sorry. It was a great game last year, but this Michigan State 2-5. Isn't that hard to believe? 0-4 in the Big Ten.
It is.
So
really
Michigan's got to win. Right?
Michigan, I think, is a 24.5-point favorite, and I think they're going to cover. I mean, that's ridiculous. But man, Michigan State's awful this year. Awful. Really bizarre.
Ted should
Similar
just throw
to the
out
Panthers.
like a name of one of the teams, and they'll probably end up having a better percentage than we do at the end of the season.
Which color do you like, green or blue?
Red.
Well, there you go. Ted's going for Oklahoma in this game.
Spoken like a true Buckeye fan. So,
Yes, sir.
Penn State and Purdue. Penn State, I think. Of course, Purdue's not. They put up some points. Penn State, if you're going to have a letdown as a college football team, this would be the week, right? For Penn State.
This would be the week. After last week, Purdue sucks, but I think Purdue will take it because I think Penn State will still be. They're still going to have the O face from last week, and they won't even be thinking about they have to play today.
Okay, it's a family fucking show, Todd. I don't know what the fuck to say. Louisville and Virginia.
Did McCleary really get $7.3 million from Penn State?
Sure, why not?
Did he? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They ruled. Wow. All right.
That is
sorry.
Yeah, that's crazy. No, that's okay. So Louisville versus Virginia. Louisville. Let's not spend a whole lot of time on this one. Northwestern and Ted's, as we just found out, his new favorite team, Ohio State. Ohio State, right, Todd?
Right.
Baylor, Texas. Man, I feel bad for Big Mike because it seemed like Texas got off to that exciting. And now Texas and Notre Dame, we both find out neither one of them are any good. So it's Baylor, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it has to be Baylor.
Florida and Georgia. Who's your pick there, Todd?
Georgia.
That'd be good for Tennessee. I'm going to go with Florida. Boise State and Wyoming. Huge game for somebody. Let's move on. Kansas and Kansas and Oklahoma. Come on. Here's a good one. Nebraska and number 7 Nebraska versus number 11 Wisconsin. That's Nebraska 7-0. Yeah, Wisconsin 5-2. I'm going to go with Wisconsin just because it's at home in Camp Randall.
I'm going with Wisconsin as well.
Auburn and Ole Miss. Auburn and Ole Miss. I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go with Auburn just because I think they're going to outscore. Another good game. If you don't have anything to do tonight at 7:15, Ted, is there's probably going to be a lot of points in this game. So I'm going to go with Auburn. Todd?
Auburn will run for 785 yards in the first quarter.
And then Clemson and Florida State. Great game in Tallahassee. Clemson 7-0, Florida State 5-2. I just think Clemson's the better program at this point, so I'm going to go with Clemson.
I agree. They're the better program at this point, but I picked Florida State for the upset, and I'm sticking with the Noles.
And a couple of games that have already been played. So Navy and South Florida. Where is South Florida? Is that in Tampa?
Sure. Yeah, it is.
That's isn't that like? Oh no, yeah, you're right, Tampa. I was thinking UCF.
Which is funny because it's not in South Florida.
It's not. Yeah, I thought that too. And the only reason I know it's in Tampa is because I was down there for work 10 years ago or something, and then passed by the campus, and I was like, "Really? That's South Florida? And Central Florida is in what? Orlando or something?"
Yeah, it's in Orlando. That is accurate.
It's actually literally accurate. I think Orlando's right in the middle of the state, isn't it? So literally centralized Florida. So South Florida and Navy number 22, of course they won't be because they lost 52-45 in regulation. But the funny thing about that game was that Navy had 21 points at the end of 3 quarters, and South Florida had 45. And then Navy came all the way back. So we just have a couple more things to talk about before we let you guys go for your Saturday, I believe. The NBA Anthony Davis out for the year with an injury. Breaking news that I just made up in my head and on this show. Anthony Davis, if you have him on your fantasy team, of course, started off the season 11 points, 6 rebounds in 48 minutes. Really big letdown. Last night came back, played 5 minutes, got injured, had a point, and fouled out in 5 minutes. And then at the end of that last foul, broke his leg. So it's a shame that Anthony Davis out for the year. You guys' thoughts?
Lee is accepting trades right now. That's the point of that comment. He is kind of going off, isn't he? Just a bit.
Out of here.
He's wobbling.
Awesome. I think 2 years ago they were mentioning that it's going to be his breakout season. He's going to be the perennial best player in the league. I think he's ready to grab that mantle this year. That was until Russell Westbrook re-signed with the Oklahoma City Thunder, because that's another guy. Triple-double last night, 51, 12, and 13. But Anthony Davis, the NBA has a really, really bright future with its young stars. Trust me, it doesn't end like how it ended for us with Michael Jordan. So when LeBron starts to slow down, there's more stars that are ready to go, and Anthony Davis is there to lead the way.
The unibrow. So yeah, that's a great point. I mean, he will be there. It's his team's still not very good, but hopefully it'll be better this year. And it's one of those things. So let's talk about the Warriors. Of course, they lost the first game, got destroyed in that first game. Back from the season. Of course, they have great players. They have great offensive players, but really his defense is going to be a hindrance to them, right? I mean, they gave up 129 to the Spurs. Obviously it's one game out of 82, which means absolutely nothing. But is this team, even though they're going to win a ton of games, is it going to hold them back when it comes to the playoffs because they just can't stop anybody?
I'll jump in on this one and say...
Jump in.
Oh, thank you. When you gut your team, and this is Warriors management on the phone now, but when you gut your team for one player, and he's one of those once in a generation type players, but they gutted at least 6 players had to go to be able to fit this guy's salary cap in, and you're putting what is it, like midline or the lower end players around. You're finding pieces all around the NBA right now. So I think number one, it's going to be tough for them in the playoffs because they don't have anyone to defend. They have guys that are extreme stoppers.
Yep, I agree with every word you just said. You got to have role players, and they've got bench role players. I mean, as in people, here's your role. You sit third over from me on the bench. That's your role. I mean, they, like you said, they gutted the team. I mean, to get a phenomenal player, but did they really need that phenomenal player? I think they'll be okay, but it's probably going to take a dozen games at least for them to shake everything out, despite preseason, to really define the roles within the game. But yeah, they don't have a defensive stopper really. They don't have. I don't know. Can you win without a post presence? And I mean win a championship. I don't mean win.
Todd, what's going to be considered as a good season? Because anything else from 73 is considered down. But when you get your team, do you say 65 games or 66 games is an excellent season?
An excellent season for them is to win the championship. A good season is they got to make the championship. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, the Cavs proved, who cares if he wins 70 games or 60 games? What matters is where you go in the playoffs. But, I mean, for them, after what they did in the past 2 seasons, they've got to make the finals. Otherwise, it's a disappointment. Well, it's a disappointment if they will win the finals, but, I mean, for their fans. But if they don't make the championship, after adding what they added, and of course the problem is, like you said, the big deal isn't what they added, it's what they subtracted, and that's going to make it really hard for them to make the conference finals. I mean, especially in the West. If they were in the East, you'd have maybe 2 teams you have to worry about. In the West, there's a lot more to worry about than that. As the Spurs sent them a message early. So,
yeah,
and they beat the Pelicans. And the Pelicans, God, that's an awful team. I mean, they've got the guy who probably is the best player for sure. But I mean, talk about not having anything around him. He will be the Mike Trout of the NBA. Mr. Davis will be.
So is it safe to say that since Durant lost to the Spurs, he's going to join the Spurs next season?
Yes. He and Aldridge will be the dynamic duo. It's I mean, I think Golden State, just because of those role players, I can see them losing in the conference finals. And in some ways, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even make the conference finals. And I'm not talking because they lost one game. It's like what you've said and what we all said going into it is like they gutted that team to get another star player. And, yeah, in a way he's worth it, but not if you don't have anybody else. Everyone's going to play? All your starters are going to play every minute of every game? Because that's basically what they've set themselves up for. I mean, that doesn't work.
Yeah, and after 2 games, according to ESPN's standings, the Warriors are not currently in the playoff picture. Is there enough time for them to catch up? I'm joking.
No, if they don't win by Sunday, they're done.
No, and the other option there is, or the other thing that really stands out to me, Kawhi Leonard of the Spurs. That guy shouldn't even be in the league. He's awful, terrible player. I mean, it's it's how Popovich is able to do it with really atrocious players like that just shows what a great player or great coach he is. And Leonard, I don't know if he would he even start on the Pelicans? I don't think so. I mean, he may not make the Pelicans roster, but because Popovich feels sorry for foreign players, for players with long, kind of dready hair, he hires women. I mean, this guy is awful. Is he not, Popovich? He's really, in Trump's America, Popovich should not be allowed to coach, right?
He's a stooge.
He's allowing all these people. Look at who he's hiring. Look at who he's hiring on his basketball team. Foreigners.
He's in Texas. He's in Texas, so he's not too far from the wall. So I'm sure they can push him over. He'll be gone.
Tony Parker swam the ocean to San Antonio because last I looked, San Antonio is right on the Gulf of Mexico. And he climbed ashore, John McCain style, like coming out of the ooze when the earth was starting to cool, and joined the Spurs. And correct me if I'm wrong, became the best player in basketball for about 20 years, averaging well over 35 points, and I believe 17 assists a game, Tony Parker. And now he's not even on the team. I think he plays for the Thunder. Maybe wrong. But that's my take on NBA basketball 2 games into the season. And just point out if I'm wrong or not.
I just have one question. You have one opportunity to pick a coach to coach your team, your GM, owner, whatever, chairman. Your 3 choices are Phil Jackson, Red Auerbach, and Greg Popovich. Who's your choice?
Pete Carroll.
Coach K.
Every day, all day. No, man, I don't know. I mean, Popovich, he does a lot and he's able to mold pieces, but that's a tough. I mean, it's almost like, who would you rather have coach your team, Bill Walsh or Belichick? You know what I'm saying? Because Belichick can change, but Walsh has a system. Whereas Jackson had the triangle, and that's a tough question. Actually, that's a good point about Jackson with the Bulls because, everybody was saying, the Warriors and the Bulls, who would win last year? Well, how many? The Bulls won 72, right? How many games did they lose in the playoffs that year? One. So I mean, you got to do it in the playoffs too. So
you got to do it
anyway. Yeah,
got to do
Tony
it in
Parker,
the playoffs.
Wrong.
Tony Parker is the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots on Sunday. Brady is out for the season. Breaking news that I just made up again. So, what shows do we have coming up on the Happy Hour Network this week? Is there a Cinema Savant tomorrow, Todd?
There's a Cinema Savant tomorrow, Todd. We will talk about movies.
What time is it? Where can people find it? Podcast or live?
Live.
Wow.
6 p.m. Live, 6 p.m. on various outlets.
Do you guys have
throughout
guests,
your
or is it
world.
just you and Rob chatting, which is
Just
entertaining.
Rob and I chatting because we're
Okay.
so phenomenal. We don't need guests. Actually,
They're awesome.
we're terrible. Well, actually, I'm terrible. Rob is entertaining. No guests as of yet, but that may change in the future. We're working on a certain gentleman by the name of
Johnny Depp.
Leave Al.
I'm nobody.
I like that, Johnny Depp and Lee Val and Mark Ruffalo all in one.
Yes.
Oh,
But yeah, we'll be on
Forgot about
Sunday.
So, and then I think the MMA show is on Monday, I believe. Actually, it was on Tuesday and this week, I believe, because it was on the same. It was at 12, I believe, and then the Seahawks show was at 7. So, Seahawks show will be on. We'll be discussing Saints, Seahawks, of course, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, and then Ted, what's happening with the Late Night Parents show live on NPR Radio.
We will be talking with 2 guests coming up, but primary featured guest will be Mr. Brad Lamb, exceptional gentleman. We're going to talk about the opioid epidemic that our country is dealing with, and it's really, hit Long Island the most. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk a little bit about election stress. And we're going to focus on online bullying and just overall, computer security and amongst the many topics. So we've got a couple of good shows.
I was just going to say, so you're for online bullying or against it? Because you're going to focus on it.
We're going to focus on it because, yes, at times you guys do bully me online, and I will be talking with a specialist this week on how to deal with it. But I am against it.
Ted, I was going to ask you if you have any sources for opioids because the election's coming and I may need some.
And I was going to apologize for a lot of Tennessee residents obviously moving to Long Island, so that's your problem. So I apologize. The volunteer state. We volunteer opioids all over the country.
Yes, yes. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to be live this week and on podcast. So we're going to have, so what we're trying to do is double up and give you a little bit of the live show and also the podcast, which is the Sunday live show. So we're giving you the best of the best, hopefully. And other than that, I think NBA Full Court Press will be live this week. I know they were live on Facebook covering the Orlando Magic, but I've been talking with them. Also, EJ Christian has confirmed he's coming back live very soon to Happy Hour Network on Fridays. So that hopefully that will complete everything, and we will have a live show each day of the week.
Yep, but Wednesday, best of the best, obviously.
The very best at what he does each and every day of his life.
And then, of course, Baseball Barbecue is right back here on... Who just talked over me? Which one was it? Which of you did it? Anyway, so, Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue next Saturday. We'll be right back here at 10 a.m. Probably, maybe by that time, discussing who the World Series winner is, and then, discussing what happens in free agency. Who knows? Or maybe not. So anyway, that's our show. You guys have any final words?
Beer.
Besides Go Hawks.
Beer and hookers.
Why are you sniffing?
And barbecue.
God, that's the off-season edition. Hookers, beer, and barbecue. That's perfect. Ted, you're a genius. Oh yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So that's our show.
We just the Bears are what we thought they were. They're what we thought they were. We played them in preseason. Who the hell takes a third game in a preseason like it's bullshit? Bullshit. We played them in the third game. Everybody played 3 quarters. The Bears are who we thought they were. And that's why we took the damn field. Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass. But they are who we thought they were. And we let them off the hook.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be confusing. Like Swedish techno confusing.
Bark, bark, meow, meow. Dance with me, purple cow. Bark, bark, meow, meow. Ooh, you lovely cow.
Geico makes it easy. With 24/7 access, all you have to do is go to Geico.com and you could save money on car insurance. It just makes sense. Unlike, you know.
Dance with me, purple cow. I like your moves.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be confusing. Like Swedish techno confusing.
Bark, bark, meow, meow. Dance with me, purple cow. Bark, bark, meow, meow. Ooh, you lovely cow.
Geico makes it easy. With 24/7 access, all you have to do is go to Geico.com and you could save money on car insurance. It just makes sense. Unlike, you know.
Dance with me, purple cow. I like your moves.